What happens when a machine starts thinking for you? What happens when a pastor lets AI write his sermon and then stands up and calls it the voice of the Holy Spirit? What happens to a family when a robot can cook or clean and do everything a mother does, only faster? Can a machine really replace the love that a mother puts into a home-cooked meal for her family? Or is it something priceless that's lost the moment we even let it try? My guest today is Larry Sanger, who's the co-founder of Wikipedia. This conversation it's more of a deep philosophical discussion about what AI is doing to the future of humanity itself. We get into what happens when we let a machine do our thinking for us. And Larry doesn't hold back on where he thinks that heads. He even admits that there was a moment that he caught himself becoming what he calls an appendage of the machine. He had to consciously pull back. By the end, this turns into something much bigger than technology, what it actually means to be human, and whether that can survive in a world where machines can think, write, and speak for us. Welcome to Man in America, a voice of reason in a world gone mad. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse. On this show, we talk to real Americans with real solutions. We help you to connect what's happening today to powerful decisions made by people in the past so we can learn from it and build something better. Now, before we start, please hit that like button. It really helps to get the information out to more people. Please subscribe, share this video or podcast with someone who really needs it, and let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. And remember that every episode is done as both a video and an audio-only podcast. So if you'd rather listen, find us on your favorite podcast app. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, a quick review helps us to reach even more people. All right, let's get into this conversation now with Larry Sanger. Larry, I have to say it is an honor to have you on the show, and I'm really looking forward to getting in this discussion with you. So thank you for giving us your time today.
Thank you. Well, it's good to be on the program.
Thank you. So you are the co-founder of what I think is the 9th most visited or 10th most visited website in the world, billions and billions of people every month, which is Wikipedia. And I guess before we kind of jump into more of the topic we're going to be getting into today, do you want to just give a little bit of your background? Because that's I don't often meet people, have the opportunity to talk to people that have done some things that you've done. So you want to just walk us through, starting up Wikipedia. What was that like? What was that process like?
Yeah. Well, my very short resume is I grew up in Alaska, as it happens, and I went to college, Reed College, got a PhD in philosophy. All three of my degrees are in philosophy from Ohio State. A year before I started Wikipedia, while I was working on Newpedia and Upedia. And it was basically the parent project of Wikipedia. Wikipedia emerged because Newpedia was growing very slowly, and we were looking for a way to allow the public to contribute more freely and easily to an encyclopedia. And then basically the tail started wagging the dog after Wikipedia started. So I'm responsible for the basic idea of a wiki encyclopedia, for the name and a lot of the jargon and a lot of the original policy and formulations. In the first year, essentially, I was like on the talk pages of anybody who showed up and saying, oh, we should do it this way, we should do it that way. And so I sort of guided it in its initial steps so that it actually was already taking off exponentially by the time I was laid off from the job. I was laid off because basically the ad contract that the owner of Wikipedia, Bomis, fell through. Basically, it's the trough of the .com boom. And then it was actually a year after that that I basically washed my hands of Wikipedia. So there was a period of about 9 months when I was sort of loosely associated with it, but I said, I'm not going to devalue my professional work. If you're not going to pay me, I'm not going to act as the leader of the project. So I didn't. Um, but it just started moving in a direction that I still think is poisonous. Um, and I regret that I was not able to move it in the direction that it had to go. But the other co-founder, Jimmy Wales, was actually one of the co-owners of Wikipedia, along with his two partners in Bomis. So, and so I was not the guy to actually make the decision. I'm just the guy who got it started. That's all. So,
Interesting. So, I guess kind of like the McDonald's kind of founder story, right? When you have the intelligent guys that get the idea, then the businessman comes in and they turn it into a business, and before you know it, the hardworking, humble beginnings just get kind of pushed aside, basically.
sort of. I mean, it's a slightly different dynamic than that. Jimmy Wales is not a dummy. He made foolish decisions, but he's not stupid. Um, and when he made, you're right though, that ultimately I think his decisions were governed by business concerns, and that's a problem. But it was a small group. Like we knew each other, we interacted with each other. But yeah, it's an interesting story, but we don't need to get into the
Yeah.
detail.
Well, I'm fascinated by the fact that you have these education philosophy, and so I grew up 20 minutes outside of OSU campus, so that was kind of
Huh?
my hometown area in Middle Ohio. Um,
You mind saying which suburb?
oh, it's actually a little town called Plain City. It was out past Marysville in Delaware, just kind of it was in the country, surrounded by farm fields, but it was a 20-minute drive to get downtown Columbus.
We're just off 33, near in between Columbus and Lancaster.
Oh, okay. Yep, yep. My mom's family's from Lancaster, so we, yep. So yeah, that was it. And so, but so you're I've always had a fascination with philosophy, and especially looking through the minds of great men. Right now I'm listening to meditations like Marcus Aurelius and trying to kind of tap into some of that wisdom to really help us to, I think, understand better what we're going through now. You have this idea that humanity has come so far along, and the problems that we have are all modern problems, and a lot of them are the same fundamental human problems that man has been confronting for since the dawn of time, right? And
Well,
so,
there's an even older work that I think you might find interesting after you read that, and that is Ecclesiastes, and maybe also Proverbs. Both of those are, I think, pair very nicely with Marcus Aurelius.
oh, okay, good. I'll look at them through that lens. I'll re-examine them through that lens. Also, Epictetus I've found to be also very just interesting and helpful in this, and just trying to frame what's happening. And so, when you see how the world is changing, especially with the advent of the internet and in this collective way of sharing ideas, but also spreading ideas, and with the internet, you can see that humanity can change very rapidly. What maybe would have taken 300 years for a cultural shift can happen in 3 weeks now. I mean, it's very interesting, and Wikipedia is oftentimes at the center of that, because with that ability to change, you have the ability to affect change, right? I know that with Wikipedia, I think it was back in 2007 and 8, they discovered that the CIA, the FBI, a lot of these intelligence agencies were actually actively editing the content on Wikipedia to control the narrative. So they're seeing it's a tool for controlling the narrative. And so how have you seen that evolve with the platform?
Um, I, so I think the general question isn't really about intelligence agencies. We don't know exactly what they have done or how actively they've been involved. I think they wouldn't be doing their job actually, according to what people say that intelligence is really about these days, if they weren't involved in Wikipedia. I think your question, though, is about Wikipedia's role in shaping the narratives that sort of guide the discussions that we have. And I think that's definitely true. I'm basically beginning actually in 2001 with the destruction of the World Trade Center. The best single source of information about the 9/11 attacks was the Wikipedia article on that, because we were just like coming together and documenting each new fact as it came over the transom, and put it into the article with the source. And it was really, a sight to behold. Nobody had ever seen anything quite like it before. This ability to essentially reflect back all the knowledge that was being generated in the media space. The problem is that in time, I'd say between 2006 and 2018, Wikipedia, the Wikipedia administrators discovered that they could lock that whole system down by excluding sources. So they started doing that systematically, and that then allows and continues to allow them to not only document the narrative or the discussion from one point of view, but actually to, as you suggest, to further guide it, to actually push it in new directions. I think that somebody like George Soros, insofar as what he tries to do by funding Antifa, must be putting money in one way or another, probably laundered in various ways, but I can't say for sure, so I'm not making any accusations here. But he'd kind of foolish strategically not to put money into Wikipedia in order to guide the narrative, because that's what it's good at, right? That's what it has become good at.
You're invited to a very important live stream. You know that right now there's a globally coordinated attack on liberty and privacy to a level that's never been seen before in humanity. You know that most of the news articles you read are designed to be distractions for the real agenda, the rollout of a social credit system in the West. And that's exactly why I've asked Glenn Meter, an online privacy expert, to give you a special online class on Thursday, August 27th at 8 p.m. Eastern, where he shows you all the necessary steps to take back your privacy online. It is a lot easier than you think, especially if you know where to start and you've got a privacy expert that's guiding you. Glenn's class is titled Exposing a Coordinated Attack on Liberty and Privacy. You don't have to be tech savvy to take back your privacy. You don't need any high-level technical skills or hacking skills. All you need is the ability to use a browser and a desire to protect your freedom. So Glenn is even going to stay on afterwards to answer your questions live. So if you feel overwhelmed because you think there's no way to protect your online privacy, you need these strategies that Glenn is giving away for free. So it's time to take back your privacy. So to register for the free webinar, visit privacyacademy.com/man-in-America, or just click on the link in the show description. Takes me to this quote right here out of Orwell, 1984. He who controls the past controls the future. He who controls the present controls the past. And it's interesting watching the evolution of the controlling of the narrative, because it's not just the controlling of the narrative. You look at Wikipedia as an example. It's kind of like he who moderates and can lock down content on Wikipedia can control the past, right? Because they're controlling the present, and that then gives you the ability to control the future. So you can take something like Wikipedia, and you can change and rewrite history in essence if you've got a particular agenda. And if you look at what's also happening with AI, and I recently did a show talking about the AI, the books, right? How the AI companies are basically buying millions of books, scanning them in. And, one of my concerns is that, is this the emergence of a, Fahrenheit 451? Is the end goal where they want to have, any books that are controversial or anything like that, do they want to somehow pull those away so you can only go through the AI to access that information? But then how do you know that you're getting the real information? Kind of like Wikipedia. How do you know what you're reading isn't some particular agenda that was woven through to there, but then that then shapes your worldview, and it maybe shapes the actions you take towards the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've said it very well. I don't know what to add there. Um,
Well, I guess kind of looking at AI, and this is something you've spoken about a lot
yeah,
recently, and looking at, I think it's, Chat GPT, it's getting nearly 50% of its information that it's sourcing to feed back to people is coming from Wikipedia, right? So
I don't
it's,
know if I doubt it's 50%. Maybe it is. Maybe you're
I'd
right.
seen some,
We
maybe
know that.
yeah, I can look it up. I remember something close. I'll see if I can find the exact the reference to that. But it's a decent amount, right? And so
Uh,
how do you see the shaping of the narrative on Wikipedia, that which then spills into the, training of these large language model AI? How do you see that all happening and playing out?
I think that the people on Wikipedia are aware of this. They have made policies against using AI to write Wikipedia articles, which is itself interesting. Um, and it's there's two different ways, basically. In I think people might not realize what we're talking about here, right? So Wikipedia articles and their influence on the culture, as we've said, is huge. And so it's not just Wikipedia itself that is used to train, it's everything that is influenced by Wikipedia that is used to train these models. So it becomes a sort of central locus or source. The fact that they don't use LLMs to write the articles means that it is, in a certain way, the upstream point from which a lot of the information in LLMs is downstream. And then, a lot of times when you ask a question, um, the LLM will look it up online, and if you tell it not to, one of the first things that it pulls up is the Wikipedia article on the subject. And I can tell you that this is problematic, not just due to ideological capture. That's maybe the worst problem, but also it's just bad information sometimes. I've been working on a project called Wiki Critic, and as part of that, I wrote a review of Wikipedia's article on the unmoved mover, which is this concept in Aristotle. Um, and so I know quite a bit about that because I've spent a good part of the last 4 or 5 months actually reading Aristotle and the background of that concept and so forth. So I've got it down. So I made a professional review, and I discovered that it's garbage. The article is, it says some true things. That's right, but it's got serious accuracy problems. And the thing is, when the AI goes to rate that particular article, unless it has direct access to books and journal articles that go deeper than the Wikipedia article, it is not able to actually to deal with the subject as well as an expert would, basically. So it will like nod along and say, this is a more or less correct article. Now, I actually have to give Claude and other LLMs some credit here, because it's not just a reflection of Wikipedia. So everything that we've been saying for the last 5 minutes, there has to be an enormous caveat. There is a lot of other training data. And when the Wikipedia article on something uh, gets something wrong and really badly wrong, people will actually notice that, and that'll also be part of the training data. Um, so it can be kind of complex. So I let's put it this way: my review was harsher to the Wikipedia article, and it had more, let's just say, meatier, in-depth information than the LLM review of the Wikipedia article. Um, the LLM review was at least able to catch problems that are not reflected in the Wikipedia article. Um, sorry, problems with the Wikipedia article. So I actually think that LLMs, because of the influence of other training data, basically, are able to correct Wikipedia, but not as well as they would be able to do if they had a much larger body of training data. So it actually is a really significant problem. It's like a bigger problem than people realize, that the LLMs are not trained um, sufficiently on a lot of proprietary books and journal articles. I mean, they are to a certain extent, but not as much as they should be. Let's put it that way.
And that concerns me as well, because I think that what I'm seeing emerging is a lot of individuals, they're just saying, oh, that's what AI said. They're looking something up, especially also I think the younger people that they think that they've almost tapped into this oracle, right, known as
Right.
Claude or Chat GPT, and they're asking these questions and they're thinking, oh, okay, this is the truth. But I think that from my understanding of it, I look at AI as just a machine, and the machine, it still has to have its own internal checks and balances. What does it determine as being success? What does it determine as being failure? But also,
Mhm.
what does AI perceive to be truth or conspiracy? And so
Mhm.
while people think that, oh, you're accessing AI, it has all the information, it's going to spit out what's going to be most accurate. Well,
Yeah.
AI, I think AI is still just, there's still a man behind the machine. You're still limited to what the person behind the AI is telling the AI that you can or cannot even explore. And I've run into that too, and say researching a topic, and you might ask
Mhm.
ChatGPT a question, and it's like, oh, I can't. It's kind of like, I can't go there, or that's a
Yes.
conspiracy, that's unfounded. And so you can see that, similar to how
Yeah.
Wikipedia has been used to push an ideology, the same thing is really coming out with these AI.
Yeah. That's right. I myself I remember asking it about, what about U.S. involvement in the bombing of, it was some incident in the war in Iraq, um, and it required about five different iterations before I could get it to acknowledge that there was a story. Um, and I actually think, just as a practical point, there's a way to make that a lot easier, and that is to like front load it with information about yourself and saying, I want you to interact at this, with this sort of background. And then some of the sort of guardrails will actually be taken off. I don't think that they're necessarily hardwired, I think some of them are, like bomb making instructions, you probably aren't going to be able to extract. I haven't actually tried, uh, but I have a feeling that they're not, that information might be difficult to get. I know they've locked down certain kind of white hat hacking um, uh, instructions. You can't learn how to stress test your systems um, for their security problems. Yes, because a lot of that same information can be used to hack another system. So yes, you're absolutely right. There are people, not just one person. There are people behind um, these things, but on the other hand, the whole system has taken on a life of its own. They're competing with each other. They're like exchanging people, right? One person will, find a better job in another place, um, and they're all not constrained just by what the executives or the board of directors happens to say. They're also greatly constrained by their own value system, right? Um, so ultimately, I think that the shape of AI is a reflection not just of like the will of, you know, our overlords, but it's a reflection of um, the broader culture and who is ultimately in control of it, where they're trying to to push us in a sort of organic way, is what I'm saying. Um, so a lot of, you know, okay, in my interaction with LLMs, I actually don't find it to be terribly woke, but it will very easily slip into that register, right? Um, because a lot of that is sort of valorized in the mainstream media and other sources that are Wikipedia, of course. And so, yeah.
So I want to look at. There's a recent post you put out on Twitter, and I'm just going to read through that because I think it's really
Sure.
important. And this is why I appreciate your philosophy, kind of background being applied to this thinking, because it's also what I find myself asking. Right? Is if we look back to say 1999, right, when the internet was just coming out, if you could have gone back and showed someone how drastically the internet would just completely alter mankind and how we operate and how things work, let alone getting into social media and then getting into AI and just the
Yeah.
fake avatars and all this stuff, it would have been mind blowing to somebody. But I'm also thinking, well, what would my future self say 5 or 10 years ahead? What would I come back to myself and tell myself about how this has shaped,
Yeah.
humanity?
It's really hard to predict. I can tell you that for sure, because I mean, if anyone was in a good position to be able to predict the influence of Wikipedia and just the overall shape of Wikipedia from the first years, it would be me, because I actually started the thing. Now, I could see the direction that it was moving in, but I didn't I wouldn't allow myself to believe that the exponential growth would continue exponentially, which it did for quite a while, like until, I don't know, 2007 or something like that, and then it became more linear. Um, and yeah, I didn't believe it. Um, but if I had simply extrapolated from what it looked like, then I easily could have gone through some, in retrospect, what seemed like commonsensical thoughts. Like the first thought is, okay, if it's growing right now and there's nothing to stop it from growing right now in an exponential way, it will continue to grow exponentially, at least for a while. Second, if people are really going to engage that much in it, then there is this thing called the establishment. Whatever exactly that means, they're going to take notice, right? So governments will take notices. Big giant corporation, very wealthy people, they will all take notice and they will use it to their ends as another tool, which they do. And what happens then? I'm no longer in control. That's for sure. Okay, that I should have realized right up front, um, and um, and also that ultimately any sort of ideals that I have right now about how it should be used are out the window. ultimately. They don't matter. Like my idea of neutrality, the original idea of neutrality is completely gone from Wikipedia, right? So you can't, you can predict the future, yes, but you have to know the right general principles to use. You can't just sort of mindlessly try to extrapolate from current trends. Anyway, I
Yeah,
just had to say.
that's a good point. Well, let me read through this real quick. It's a few paragraphs here. This is the post you put. I think this is. I want to dig into this a little bit with you. You say a central locus of the debate over LLM authorship is the very idea that we are human, that to communicate is human, and above all, love your neighbor as yourself. Insofar as true care of a person involves engaging with him sincerely, I ask, how can you really love your neighbor insofar that involves verbally interacting if you do not genuinely communicate with him? I do not see how, if an LLM is authoring your words, you are not the one communicating, the clanker is. And then your neighbor is not receiving your words, but a clanker's. Similarly, if your neighbor responds to you not with his own words, but with some clankers, then no human interaction has occurred. It's just a mockery of human interaction. This leaves us in bubbles in which we interact with machines, some of which are basically act as our ambassadors to other bubbles, at the center of which there's a real human being. That is the direction we seem to be moving in, all communication mediated, never any direct. Our own contribution to the process threatens to shrink as the clankers become more and more adept at predicting what we would say, and who knows when it stops. Will we stop having thoughts of our own? Will we accept the thoughts attributed to us by an intelligent machine as our own? Will we then simply agree to let those thoughts be sent to others or published, attributing to us, but with no one really knowing what we really think because we ourselves don't know? I began this comment by saying there's no way to communicate genuinely if mediated by machines, and that we cannot really love one another if we are never authentically connected to one another. But the ultimate cause and result of this state of affairs would be the loss of our own humanity. How can there be free will without free thought? How can there be free thought with any thought of our own? If we descend to the center of an LLM-mediated bubble, I fear we will end up empty shells, pawns of whoever controls the LLMs. So there's a lot of very profound ideas in there, but I'll let you just expand on this or comment however you'd like to.
Sure. You know, uh, this is a response to a debate that's been happening in the last couple of weeks, I would say, especially it's been going on for longer than that, but especially in the last couple of weeks among at least the people that I interact with on X, about the nature of LLM authorship and whether you can actually claim, well, actually, there's two different questions at least. One is whether you should use LLMs to author text. All right, that's one thing. And the other is whether you should claim that text as your own. That's a different question altogether. And one side seems to be saying, look, the nature of authorship has changed. Just as a matter of fact, live with it. Just like, with the invention of writing, the nature of thought changed because when you write things down, then new things like whole extended discourses, book-length discourses become possible, which are not really possible in a spoken form. I think that's true. And I think also that, when publishing became automated with the printing press, that was another huge change in really the way that we interact, but also the way that we think. And then the advent of the internet also, like I wasn't in a previous generation, that time that I was spending reading online people's just random comments probably would have been spent reading journal articles, which is harder, but less immediate and interactive. So, and now, especially in the last 15, 20 years, communication has become much briefer and faster. And so anyway, I'm painting a picture here that everybody is familiar with, but to make the sort of case that I'm responding to, which is that what we are doing when we are using LLMs to communicate, or just to author text, is a natural next step in the technology of uh, using machines to develop our thoughts and to communicate. Right. Okay. My response to this is that in every step before this, there was never a step in which some machine was doing your thinking for you. Now, there's something like that, actually, that has happened in the age of social media. And this is something that people have complained about a lot, namely that our feeds are carefully engineered and we can be manipulated by our feeds. And whereas before, back in like the 1990s, you saw the whole fire hose, and you picked what you wanted to read and so forth. It was, in a certain way, much more authentic and genuine. But when someone is controlling how, or rather what you are reacting to, that changes the whole nature of how we develop the thoughts that we think. It's crazy, but that's true, right? Well, this is one step well beyond even that, all right? And here, what we're talking about is a machine actually writing the words that you claim to be your own. And I know exactly what people mean when they defend this, because I've done it myself somewhat. Like, I'll engage Claude in a long discussion about theology or whatever it is I'm thinking about, and I'll go through the total output. Will be like that much. Like, I've written this much. It's two meaty paragraphs. That's it, right? And I'll say, can you like commit that to memory? Just put my words in a way that I can save them. I never post them. I think I might have done that once or twice, but I've always said this is the LLM summary of my thoughts. Okay. But I've always noticed when it does that for me, it always adds stuff. And it's not just like connecting tissue, right? As that's the phrase that it uses. It's involved in word choice, and words correspond to concepts. And if they change a word, they actually can change what you have thought, right? This happened to me last night. I was saying, okay, I'm thinking of this new feature. I'm gonna let's discuss this new feature. And then I went through the whole process, right? And this time I wrote this much to it, and I said, okay, make a requirements document out of that. And I looked it over, and it's like, I didn't recognize this at all. This is not what I said. It manipulated what I said, what I told it. And then I said, look, I want you to just write down what I said in using my words, but in a way that is more structured and fixes spelling errors and stuff like that, right? And then ask me a bunch of questions that you think I need to answer, and I will answer them serially. And then what resulted there was still the clanker's work, but it was mostly mine, or guided by me, or something like that. The whole process is a lot faster than me just doing it all on my own, for sure, because I've done that in the past a lot. Like, I'm a very experienced project manager. I've managed a good dozen or more projects, big projects. So I know what it looks like to do it without a clanker. And so I know that it's a big time saver. But it just, and again, this is just like last night, I sort of threw up my hands and said, what the heck am I even doing here? It's like, I don't want to become an appendage of the machine. And the way that Claude wanted me to move in, I would have essentially been that. Like, I would have given it a few suggestive ideas, and then it would write out, it would flesh them out in great detail in a direction that I had not thought of, for sure, and disagreed with, is in fact, once I thought about it, right? Um, and that's really problematic. All right, so but that's an example from coding, from project management, I guess you'd say. Um, but when it comes to things like politics, philosophy, theology, and so forth, like, matters are in a certain way much more dire, because what we're talking about there is not, you know, a piece of software that goes into production to produce an objective outcome that can be can be judged on its own merits. In other words, the outcome, right? Here, what you're when a pastor writes a sermon, for example, right? Um, the the thing is supposed to be an expression of the thoughts and even the spirit of the pastor. And if the pastor just generates a sermon, maybe gives it a few thoughts and lets it generate all the rest, fill in the blanks, do all the research, et cetera, et cetera, um, that is really, really insidious. On for several different reasons. As I well, in the post that you read is actually a follow-up to another post that I did. So there's three different problems with passing off a clanker's work as your own. First of all, that's lying, right? So, you know, you're saying that you wrote this, essentially. You're claiming that you wrote it. And I don't want it to be a new standard where if you assert something, you have to guess whether or not a clanker wrote it. It's like, I want to know if a clanker wrote it or if you wrote it, because those are different cases, and I will treat the text differently. All right. So I'm going to continue to call it a lie if a clanker writes something and you pass it off as your own work. That's a lie. All right. And second, I'm just reading now. In order to develop and maintain our capacity of thought, we must exercise it and not outsource it. And when it comes to extended thinking, the primary medium of thought is writing, right? So, I mean, if we get into the habit, this is a terrible habit. I can tell you already, it is a terrible habit to get into, to, you know, just write down a few cursory thoughts and then say, what the hell, you know, Claude can do a better job. I'll give it this outline and let it write the thing. No, that's wrong, right? You are, I guarantee, making yourself a stupider person by doing that, because you have to continue to exercise those muscles, right? And I'm going to add another point along these lines that's not here, and that does apply to pastors, because I know that actually a fair number of pastors follow me now. And it's one thing to lie, right, about what your thoughts are, and to weaken your mental abilities. That's terrible, right? But when you actually pass something off as your own work, claiming it to be supported by the Holy Spirit, like part of the voice of the church, of the body of Christ, one of the leaders of the body of Christ, I mean, that is extremely wrong. I'll have to write an essay about that and try to explain, but it's supposed to be an expression of the Spirit of God. Okay, LLMs do not have the Spirit of God. The Spirit of God is not summarized in training data. It's not. It can be aped. I'm not denying that, right? Can sound like it, but it's not. The Spirit of God is a real thing, right? And it is in a certain way, not biologically organic, but it is an organic thing. It's analog. It's out there, um, and it indwells us. And if we are writing something that is meant to be, preached to God's people, then it has to come from the Spirit, not from a clinker. So anyway, all right. And then a third reason, right? Is that it's I'm just going to read this. It's positively insulting, quite aside from the lying inherent in the thing, to be shown words presented as human communication when they are not. They're no such thing. It's not just a lie, in other words, it's inauthentic. It's a contemptuous abuse of the trust that another person has, right? That you are communicating with them and not saying, here, read this, which some machine wrote. Right? That's not just a lie. It's an insidious and actually dehumanizing treatment of your fellow men. So why should I be made to take seriously or respond to some paragraphs that you pass off as your own? Or for that matter, why should the congregation accept your words, right? As coming from the Holy Spirit when they clearly didn't, or they didn't come out of your head. Why shouldn't I just assign another clanker to respond to that in kind? Wouldn't that be fair? So the whole process is inauthentic. So that's why when I developed that thought, the whole idea is that we become bubbles, essentially. That seems to be the direction that we could be moving in, where we don't actually collide with each other in meat space. Occasionally, if we have to, we'll actually, bridge the gap through sound waves and so forth. But in the future, at least online, who knows? We'll always be talking to an LLM. It will always rework our words or develop our words and send those over to another person. And they maybe those words will be summarized for us by their clanker, and the person we're talking to will maybe utter a few syllables in response, and that will be developed into a whole discourse. I mean, the whole thing is extremely dehumanizing on several levels. So
I couldn't agree more. Here's an uncomfortable question. Why should your messaging app need to know anything about you? Most of us have already accepted that technology companies collect enormous amounts of information: what we click, where we go, what we buy, and who we interact with. That information is valuable because your attention is valuable. Keat takes a radically different approach. So Keat is a free messaging, file sharing, and video calling app built peer-to-peer. So there's no centralized company database that's holding on to your conversations. There's no metadata tracking and no phone number or email are even required to use it. Your messages are end-to-end encrypted and move between the people in the conversation. Your private life shouldn't be another crop in somebody else's data farm. So to get this today, visit keat.io/Man in America. That's Keat, which is KEET.io/Man in America. So download it free and write one person that you trust and start a conversation that belongs to you, not some big data harvesting company. When I'm researching, say I'm looking through Substack or looking through what's happening on Twitter, I've almost detected this. You have like your BS detector. What's like the AI detector, and it drives me crazy when I'll see these threads on AI that or on X that go viral and they've got 6 million views, but you can see it so plainly. The entire thing was just AI like spew. You can see it
Yes.
in the sentence structure. You can see it in, it'll be like a paragraph. It'll be one line. It'll say, let that sink in, period. And then it'll kind of
Yes.
jump and you can see, or the M dash, or you can see, you recognize all these things that it does.
I
And
use M dashes. It pisses me off that it has ruined the M dash.
I
I
know.
It was trained on me. I'm not using it. It was trained on me.
Yeah,
Those M
it's
dashes are mine. Dang
it's
it.
it's funny because sometimes when I'm writing copy or I'm writing something, I find that I will purposefully remove an M dash. But even when the M dash makes more sense there, because I'm like, no, I've developed this aversion to M dashes.
Yeah.
So, um, and so, but when you're reflecting on this, and you talked about you use the word appendage. And what happens when this becomes an appendage or you become an appendage of it. And I think that it really, I think a lot of this goes back into the whole idea of transhumanism and this idea of augmenting the human body, the human brain with external machinery, technology to improve. But I think that if you look at how the introduction of machinery of various kinds has changed things, it oftentimes leads to an atrophy of something, right? If you look at, say, farmers, look at farmers, say, 100 years ago, you'd probably be hard pressed to go find a farmer that weighed 300 pounds 100 years ago, right? Because it was it was a hard job. But now I grew up, I mentioned in Plain City, it was a farming, hence the
Yeah,
word
yeah.
plain, right? It was a farming community. A lot of the farmers I knew growing up were pushing 300 pounds because they were sitting most of their day in a giant combine. And it was the young guys like us that get to go, load the hay into the hay loft or something like that. But I think that that's indicative of something, is that the muscles that used to be needed to farm and work the land, those muscles atrophied and they weren't needed anymore. And now you've got, drones, you've got AI, operated combines that there's not even a driver out there. The driver could be sitting on a couch, drinking a Bud Light, doing his farming, right, and harvesting the field. And so if you look at
So-
what happens mentally, and this is one of my concerns, is that I feel like that the more people that start using AI to replace their own thought process, I think that we're going to see an atrophy of the human mind itself, and we're going to see a dumbing down of the overall. Well, I guess it's of the people that want to use it. So I know there's a large movement of people rejecting it, which is encouraging, even especially the younger generations. But I'm worried about this the atrophying of the human mind and really the human spirit with that.
Yeah. I agree. And this is actually it's very interesting that you mentioned transhumanism in this connection, because a lot of the leaders of society, it seems to me, especially in Silicon Valley, are basically transhumanists. And what a lot of people don't realize is that this is actually a very old intellectual tradition. And it's an extension of a theological tradition called millennialism. And the idea is that human beings will be the ones to usher in the kingdom of God, and that we need to build it ourselves. And we're capable of doing that. That's part of the thinking behind the idea that we have always been in Christ's millennial reign. See, there's this chapter in Revelation, in the book of Revelation, that talks about, Christ will reign for 1,000 years, and that's called the millennium, right? So and there are people, again, who believe that reign began long ago and it's continuing now, and we're just like on the cusp now of really, like the whole, for example, the whole idea that uh, we're going to beat the very processes that cause aging, and we will maybe our children are the first ones that will live forever after this, if they don't, like, killed by accidents or whatever. Um, so that's all part of this idea of millennialism. I'm saying that transhumanism is part of that. And I'm also saying then that it dovetails very nicely this idea that AI can be uh, uh, basically a mental prosthetic. I remember I worked for this guy for a couple of years who said that he would just love to be one of the first people that would get a brain implant that would enable him to, communicate constantly with, you know, with the overmind or whatever it would be called. And because that would really be empowering. To which I said, and have long said actually, that any such movement is, just as you say, going to weaken our abilities. And the main theological response is also the same as the main important philosophical response to millennialism on the one hand and transhumanism on the other. And it is that when we become like enhanced, it's not really us anymore, right? Okay, so just let's suppose that they create these literal brain prosthetics that actually prevent us from doing bad things. I don't know, something like that, right? So we really want to do something. Okay, I'm not going to do that because my brain now prevents me, or not my brain. No, it's this prosthetic that prevents me. All right, so just imagine that sort of thing happening. Well, then it's not really us. We have not been improved, right? We were never going to be the ones that would be improved. It would be a hybrid at best. And because our will in that case would have to be weakened, we will actually become less human. All right. So that's the kind of argument that we're talking about. So the whole idea of, against millennialism, the idea is if the only way that human beings can be perfected is by top-down dictatorial rule, which is what it often ends up being, right? And then we just have to look at what human life is under such rule. It's, again, dehumanized, right? Yes, this is just another example of the same thing. When we use LLMs to do our thinking for us, we are essentially using them as prosthetics. And yes, they can get some things done a lot faster for us, and that's actually good. And there are certain uses of these tools that are like important, great blessings to the world for sure. Why not? Yes. Okay. But like, for example, my son is now a incoming sophomore computer engineer. He doesn't want to use LLMs for good reason. That, like, okay, this gets in the way of his actually learning programming, of course, right? Now, I don't really care. Like, I just want to get stuff done. And like, I don't really care about being the author of the software. And I'm not going to outsource the job of project management because that's what I'm good at. All right. So I think ultimately, I don't think we quite all have this figured out, but yeah, a lot of stuff is going to become increasingly automated. And we just have to make sure that the way in which we use automation does not dehumanize us. That's the bottom line.
When you talked about the kind of augmenting and these supposed improvement, through the addition of this technology, what I'm thinking is, I feel like that one of the best things that a human being could do would be go spend a year living in a cabin in the woods with no electricity, with an oil lamp to write by, and a bunch of notebooks and a bunch of pencils, and I think that people, through going backwards like that, I have a feeling that people would develop senses that they didn't have before. Which is, this has been my experience too. When you spend more time just with Earth and outside, which I think is in many ways, I look at that as kind of like getting closer to God, right? Getting back to God's creation, not man's creation of staring at screens and everything. Going back into just the smell of the air, the sound of the birds, those kinds of things. I find that people will advance in ways that you could never augment with some sort of external technology. Now, in terms of, you mentioned a lot of the Silicon Valley, a lot of the tech, people are transhumanists. And yeah, I agree. Even there was an interview Jared Kushner did where Jared Kushner openly said in this interview that he hopes that he's the last generation to die, right? Or basically he hopes that he's the first generation to live forever. And I've thought a lot about that. And I feel like that, like, to me, that's only a mindset you could have if you're somehow maybe atheist or something, or if you didn't believe in the afterlife, because it's like, the human world kind of sucks, right? Like, you have a toothache, then you stub your toe, and then the IRS is coming after you. It's like, why would I want to extend my life forever here? It's like when I can go, kind of bask in the glory of the divine, right? And have true, kind of, unlimited life. But I wanted to highlight something. So I want to see what your thoughts are to this. So I think one of the key transhumanists that's driving a lot of this agenda at the high levels is, Yuval Noah Harari, right? So he's the, kind of the oracle of the WEF, right? Or something. But I want to, if you don't mind, I'm going to play about a 1.5 minute long video where, this is from earlier this year, where Harari is commenting on the role of AI and its command of words and how he sees it transforming things. Because I think it touches on a lot of what you were saying earlier, that the machine doesn't have the human soul. Like a pastor writing something using a machine, there's not going to be the Holy Spirit coming through, right? Because I believe, as you do too, I believe that we were created by God, right? We have a soul that was given to us by God. And there's something that's within us that a machine would never be able to replicate, right? It's something that even the best scientists right now have no idea how the human brain actually works. They have some theories, but it's such a profound thing that it's like, ants trying to understand how a skyscraper was built or something. But anyway, I'll
Yes.
play this from Harari, and I'd love to get your thoughts on his perspectives. I think it's really kind of tunes into what we're talking about here. So this is from earlier this year.
Do you know? As far as putting words in order is concerned, AI already thinks better than many of us. Therefore, anything made of words will be taken over by AI. If laws are made of words, then AI will take over the legal system. If books are just combinations of words, then AI will take over books. If religion is built from words, then AI will take over religion. This is particularly true of religions based on books, like Islam, Christianity, or Judaism. Judaism calls itself the religion of the book, and it grants ultimate authority not to humans, but to words in books. Humans have authority in Judaism not because of our experiences, but only because we learn words in books. Now, no human can read and remember all the words in all the Jewish books, but AI can easily do that. What happens to a religion of the book when the greatest expert on the holy book is an AI?
So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what he said there.
Well, I mean, does he actually believe the things that he's saying there?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I'm not sure.
Maybe he just wants us to believe that, because then we would be easier to control. or something like that. That could be, I suppose. But if he's serious, what he's saying is transparently ludicrous. So let's put it this way. I actually believe that AI is never going to exceed its training data. There is nothing. So one thing that is absolutely true about intelligence is that ultimately the ultimate sources of intelligence are organic. And I don't just mean that the training data comes ultimately from human minds. That's true. What I'm saying is that the very idea of interacting with the world, putting words together about the world, and actually having original thoughts based on that, are ultimately something that is an outgrowth of the embeddedness of a living being in dealing with the world. So it's a very high level philosophical concept. You might say, well, what about a thermostat, right? The thermostat reads the temperature and prints out the number on the pad and tells you what the temperature is inside. Is that like thinking? Well, no. And the principle doesn't change. That system was programmed by a human being and had to be carefully calibrated by a human being. It works only because it contains expressions of human minds, ultimately. The same is true of LLMs. There is nothing original in what it says. It's all extrapolation in what it is. So the LLM is never going to get better. It'll get faster, but it's never going to get better than the smartest instance of the training data. Also, extrapolations made by LLMs could produce results, like as in math theorems being shown to be, or postulates rather, shown to be true or false. Yes, it can do that. I'm not denying that. And, but the thing is, that's, again, it's all an extrapolation from the training data. That's not how human beings are. Our minds are not extrapolations of our training data. That's not how we work, right? That's an old and wrong model of how the mind works. So, and it's actually associated with something that the liberal transhumanists that rule us like to still believe in, which is the idea of a blank slate, which is like sort of the founding myth of empiricism, right? So I am an empiricist to a great extent, but not to that extent. There is a great deal of wisdom that we still don't understand, as you say, that is embedded in our very being, which is an organic being, one that was made by God and is, again, right now, way beyond us to really understand. So do we really understand even now why the thoughts bubble up in us as they seem to? No, we do not. We don't even understand ourselves, right? And you cannot model the way the human mind works by an AI. What you can model is the output of human of human cognition, right? So speech, right, and code and other things like that, art. But you can't actually model what's going on in the mind because we ourselves don't know what's going on. You can make postulates. You can make hypotheses about how the human mind must work based on the fact that we're able to model it as, a neural network, for example. All right, and those are interesting arguments, and I'm not saying they're entirely wrong, but even there, the nature of the neural network is still, to a very great extent, a black box, right? So I'm enough of a skeptic to be able to admit that there might come a time in the future when there will be complete recreations of mind-like beings that are not like human beings, right? All I'm saying right now is we know how LLMs work pretty much, and they are, the way that the human mind works is not that. And again, just to hammer on one point that's important, our intelligence is an embodied thing. So like there's here on this line that I refer to a book. What is it called? I'm blocking the name of both the book and the author. It's a classic written about 1970. I can look it up and you can put it on the screen later. A classic work of philosophy of artificial intelligence, essentially. And he takes the view, and I agree with him, and I've thought so ever since I read the book, that basically...
Is it what computers can't do?
Yes, it is.
By Hubert Dreyfus.
Exactly. There it is. And it's actually a very good read. It's like 50 years old now, but it's still very, very applicable. In fact, I think more people should be reading it.
Is this
now.
it right here?
No.
Oh, actually, wait.
Oh, yeah, maybe it is. Okay.
Maybe a different cover.
What's the publication? What's the publication date on it?
I think it's 73. Let's see.
This looks like an updated version.
This originally is 72, but
Okay.
it updated 92. Yep.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's the updated version of the one that I read. Okay. So, yeah, it's a fascinating book, and it's well worth the time. And the whole point there is that we are ultimately embodied beings, that the nature of human intelligence is evolved, or it was developed in a way so that it is it enables us to deal with the world in creative ways. I'm not actually making the argument very well, I'm afraid, so I should probably stop there. But yes.
And so, well, I think that this, fundamentally, I think we, as we're wrapping up, we've gone over an hour pretty easily. And I think we could go on for much longer if we allowed ourselves. But I think that it's a very fundamental idea this boils down into of, I think, what does it mean to be human? And what does it mean to not be human? And can man, through technology, create what it means to be human? And I think the answer is no. I think that this is, whether you're looking at Frankenstein, kind of fictionally, or the Tower of Babel, or any of these different things throughout history, that whenever man attempts to play God, at a certain point, God comes in and puts man back into his place. And that's one of the oldest lessons, I think, that we have. And I think that that's where this lies. And so I think that for me, the solution I see is just do whatever I can to hold on to my humanity, and to put a lot of time and effort and thought into thinking about what does it mean to be human, and to guard myself against the things
Yes.
that will strip me of my humanity.
Yeah. This is an old problem with all kinds of technology. You have to use it intentionally because the purpose of technology is to make things easier, right? But sometimes in order to do things right, you can't do them the easy way. So I have no doubt that there were some advantages to doing plowing with oxen rather than you get free fertilizer at least. I don't know. But well, there's all kinds of other examples that can be given. Um, More recently, I think, just like with television, right? It's easy for people to just like sit down in front of a television and just veg out, as the saying was for a long time, and they basically becoming vegetables, like, and less human sort of person. And what is it that makes us say that we are vegging out or being less human? It's the very fact that we are not actually being active. We actually have to use our will, make decisions, and act on them ourselves in order to do things. So you actually have to make an effort to actually turn off the television or turn off YouTube or whatever it is that you're using, and actually go and do something. Like go and actually exercise, take a walk, whatever, work out. Actually go and write something intentionally. Restrain yourself from doom scrolling, right? And if you actually have some thoughts that you want to commit, then you intentionally commit them, right? So that's actually something that's very intentional, very modern, right? That you're putting out there, but it is more organic because it comes right out of your own soul, your own interaction with the world. And so I agree, and so I'm just adding to what you say. The way that we hold on to our humanity, first and foremost, is to recognize when some technology is like doing something for us that we ought to perhaps consider doing for ourselves, or that we actually know that we should be doing for ourselves. Like when you actually let the LLM draft some writing for you, to get back to our example, it's just, you just have to make a rule for yourself. You don't do that. It's wrong. It's bad, right? There's lots of reasons why we should not do that. You just don't do it. And this is one, it's a rule that I made for myself, you know. But again, that's only one example of like what's going to happen when there are robots, right? This is like, what if Elon Musk says, look, I'm a very generous guy, and I have been working, for the last 5-10 years, whatever it will be, on making just these awesome robots. And it's like the rollout of the iPhone, but times 10, times 100, right? It's like before the iPhone, and then there's after the iPhone. The world changes. That's potentially what it could be like with robots, especially when you have super intelligent robots that can actually build other robots, because that of course is what's, that's the singularity, right? When they can,
that's Terminator.
Yes, that's when they can actually start developing themselves. They can do the mining. They can find the raw materials. They can do the entire supply chain vertical. And so look, you don't have to have a robot, but we're going to give you a robot if you want one. And all you have to do is ask, put in your address, sign this contract, and in 5 hours, your robot will walk up to your door and knock, and you can use it in however you want, as long as it's legal. And Okay, so and if you want three, we'll let you have three. All right. So imagine then, what is life going to be like when you've got all of these machines that are actually modeled after human beings, and they're designed to be able to do the things that we do. All right. Is the wife who loves cooking, and like you know, it's I don't think it's actually misogynist of me to say that a lot of women take pride in cooking for their family, and they like would feel much less if they weren't doing that. But what happens if there is a robot that like starts doing the cooking, and everyone is amazed when they have, they taste this absolutely delicious meal, which is better than anything that mommy ever made, right? It's like, no, don't cook for us, mommy. Let the robot do it. Um, that's kind of what's going to happen. What's going to happen to us? You know, I think mommy needs to keep cooking. Maybe mommy needs to take lessons in cooking from the robot or something. I'm not really sure what happens there. Um, and it's the same way, like with my son, learning to code. He could be using clankers a lot more. He doesn't though. He's actually faster than a lot of clankers doing a lot of things. But I think they have they've overtaken him on a lot of stuff. They're like, I've made this website in the last couple of weeks faster than he could have made it for me, hands down. Yep, kind of turning point for me. Kind of sad in a way, but the point is that it's gonna be important for people like him to still exist who can actually do the thing itself, right? And so I think I should just leave it at that. I mean, there's a lot of ramifications of the whole idea that yes, we have to remain human, and the way that we remain human is by doing things for our own damn selves, basically.
Yeah. And I think doing things that are human, especially the things they've been doing for hundreds of years or thousands of years, baking bread, gardening, the things that it'd be so easy to have, oh, my Optimus robot's going to do all the gardening now. Well,
Yeah,
you then lose touch with that, right? You lose that sense, not to mention just what's kind of beneath these things. When someone cooks a meal for you and they pour their heart into it, they put their love into it. They have the intention. They're going to create this beautiful meal for my family to
yeah,
nourish my husband and my children. You're not going to get that from a robot. No, it's
no,
it's 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 going to be something else. And so, yeah, I think it's important. I'm glad that we ended on this
kind of
too.
fast
And
food.
yeah, 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 exactly. Yeah, there you go. Like McDonald's in your kitchen for you.
Yep, very good.
Yeah. Well, Larry, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you, and I thank you for giving us your time, and look forward to to keeping in touch and watching all this unfold. I've got a few books for me to check out to add to the library, and I thank you for that.
Absolutely, for sure. And have people go to it'll be larrysanger.org/wikicritic. So that's the mock-up of the
Okay.
site that we
So here's
launched.
your main website, larrysanger.org, and then
Yeah, and then there's no link from that. Then you just go /wikicritic.
oh, okay, yep, here we go.
Yeah, and then like if you click on the green link in the upper right, then you'll come to a page that gives the instructions on submitting a comment. So what I'm asking people to do is to go to Wikipedia, find an article that you want to review. Maybe it's one you love to hate, or maybe you want to give kudos, whatever. Um, then the idea is if you scroll down just a little bit, there it is. Okay, stop. Format a review.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the idea is just click it, You'll come to a form. You can fill out it. All of the instructions are there. Don't be intimidated by. You don't even have to use this form. This is just it will format your review if you want. You don't have to format the review. You can just drop the link in. However, it's not live yet, so I'm not actually allowing people to drop the link in. And for that, you're going to have to, you'll have to use the comment form on my website, and just like give me the link or reply to some thread on X. Just follow me on X, L Sanger, and I'll give you access to Wikicritic, which is already very cool. It's got like something like 30 reviews generated by LLMs and 9 reviews generated by human beings. And yeah, we're talking about like the difference between them. It's interesting, obviously, to compare them. And I think there's ultimately maybe more value in the human reviews. There will be, I think, when we launch. So yeah, the whole idea is Wikipedia needs a comment section. So please leave a comment.
Okay, makes sense. It's almost like community notes, right? It's a similar idea of allowing you to, I guess, to review and to grade and say, I give this an F. It's full of CIA propaganda, or I give this a whatever. You can do that.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. Well, good. So, and you mentioned again your Twitter page, right? It's right here. It's just at L Sanger over there on Twitter, which I try to call it Twitter because I feel like the X is almost part of that dehumanization, right? Let's get rid of the name that has a meaning to it and just put in a single letter X. It's like, well, I like calling it Twitter. So that's my little resistance to the machine there. Well, Larry, again, it was great talking to you. I thank you for your time and look forward to doing this again with you.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Yep, you too.
If you could go back in time and buy oil before the world relied on it, would you? Of course you would. Anyone would. So why aren't you buying silver right now? You see, the people who recognized oil early didn't just make money. They got ahead of one of the biggest economic shifts in history. And today, a similar opportunity is unfolding with silver, because silver is a lot more than just a precious metal. It's a critical resource used in solar panels, electric vehicles, defense systems, AI infrastructure, and even these massive data centers that are powering our digital world and the surveillance grid. So while demand keeps growing, it's actually still affordable enough that the average American can start accumulating it right now. And that's why investors are turning to silver to protect against inflation and own one of the world's most important strategic resources. Don't be the person who looks back in 10 years and says, I saw it coming, but I just didn't act. I'm sorry. So visit goldwithseth.com and learn just how easy it is to own physical silver. Again, that's goldwithseth.com. And here's something a little bit extra. If you just mention my name when you reach out to Noble Gold, they're going to send you a 1/10 ounce of gold coin just as a thank you when you open a new qualified account. So again, that's goldwithseth.com.